The mysterious distress call. The spaceport on the small asteroid was always busy. Ships of all shapes and sizes came from all corners of the galaxy, bringing with them stories of far-off places, strange new technology, and most importantly, things that needed fixing. John was the man they all turned to when their ships were in trouble. He was a human mechanic, known for his ability to fix just about anything that came his way, no matter how complicated or unfamiliar. On this particular day, John was working on a ship that had come in from a distant star system. The work was routine, nothing too challenging. He wiped the sweat from his brow, his hands blackened with grease. As he tightened the last bolt, he heard a beeping sound from the small comms device on his workbench. He frowned and picked it up. The device was old and scratched, but it was reliable. John had never missed a signal since he'd started working at the spaceport. The signal was faint, barely registering on the screen. John tapped the side of the device, but the weak signal remained. He leaned in closer, squinting at the small display. It was a distress call, coming from deep within the nearby asteroid belt. That was odd. Ships rarely ventured that far out, and when they did, they usually had powerful engines and thick armor to protect them from the dangerous debris fields. Curiosity piqued. John set aside his tools and adjusted the comms device to get a clearer signal. As he fine-tuned the frequency, the signal grew stronger, though still patchy. He could just make out a voice, soft, urgent, and clearly in distress. Anyone. Help. Ship. Damaged. Losing power. John's instincts kicked in. Whoever was out there was in serious trouble, and he couldn't just ignore the call. He quickly sent a response, hoping it would reach the ship in time. "This is John, mechanic at Asteroid 9 Spaceport. I received your distress call. What's your location?" There was a pause, and then the voice came through again, a bit clearer this time. "Thank you. I'm near the central belt. My ship, Valyrian make, losing power rapidly." John's eyes widened. A Valyrian ship. He had heard of them, but they were extremely rare. The Valyrians were a mysterious race, known for their advanced technology and secrecy. Very few people had ever seen a Valyrian ship up close, let alone worked on one. He grabbed his toolkit and raced to his own ship, a reliable but old freighter that he had modified over the years. As he powered up the engines, he sent another message to the stranded ship. "Hang tight. I'm on my way. I'll be there soon." John guided his ship out of the spaceport and into the asteroid belt. The journey was treacherous, with massive rocks tumbling through space at alarming speeds. But John had navigated the belt many times before, and he deftly maneuvered his ship through the debris, his eyes scanning the sensors for any sign of the stranded vessel. After what felt like an eternity, John's sensors picked up a faint signal. He followed it until he spotted the ship, an elegant, sleek vessel that was clearly Galerian. Its surface was smooth and reflective, almost as if it were made of liquid metal. But it was damaged. One of its engines was completely offline, and the other was sputtering weakly, barely keeping the ship afloat. John approached cautiously, opening a communication channel as he neared. "This is John. I found your ship. I'm coming aboard to help with the repairs." There was a brief pause before the response came through, this time clearer. "Thank you, John. Please hurry. I don't have much time." John docked his ship with the Valyrian vessel and quickly made his way inside. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. Smooth surfaces, advanced tech that he couldn't even begin to understand, and an air of quiet elegance. But what caught his attention the most was the woman standing in the center of the control room. She was tall, with a slender build and an air of grace about her. Her skin had a soft, silvery glow, and her eyes were a deep shade of blue that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Her expression was calm, but John could see the worry in her eyes. "You must be John," she said, her voice smooth and melodic. "I'm Lyra. Thank you for coming." John nodded, a bit taken aback by her appearance, but quickly refocusing on the task at hand. Let's get to work. What's the problem? Lyra gestured to the main console. One of the engines failed, and the other is about to give out. I've tried everything I can, but the systems are too damaged. John moved to the console, quickly assessing the situation. It was bad, very bad. The ship's systems were unlike anything he'd seen before, but he could tell that they were on the brink of total failure. If the second engine went offline, the ship would be stranded in the asteroid belt, with no way to escape. He set to work immediately, pulling out his tools and diving into the repairs. The ship's technology was advanced, far beyond anything he was used to, but John was nothing if not resourceful. He carefully bypassed the damaged circuits, rerouted power to the remaining engine, and stabilized the core systems. As he worked, Lyra watched him closely, her eyes following his every move. She was clearly impressed by his skill, but there was something else in her gaze, something John couldn't quite place. After what felt like hours, John finally finished the repairs. He wiped his hands on his pants and turned to Lyra. That should do it. The engine's stable, and you should be able to make it out of the belt now. Lyra's face softened into a grateful smile. Thank you, John. You've saved my life. John shrugged, trying to play it off as no big deal, but he couldn't ignore the sense of accomplishment that welled up inside him. Just doing my job. As Lyra prepared to power up the ship, John couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this situation than met the eye. Something about Lyra, her ship, and the whole mysterious distress call didn't add up. But before he could dwell on it too much, Lyra turned to him again. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice serious now. But first, we need to get out of here. It's not safe. John nodded, his curiosity piqued even further. All right, let's get moving. As they prepared to leave, John couldn't help but wonder what he had gotten himself into. The distress call had brought him here, but it was clear that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. A ship like no other. As John's ship and the Valyrian vessel moved away from the asteroid belt, the tension in the air started to ease, but only slightly. The asteroid belt was dangerous, but it was clear that the real danger was still lurking out there, somewhere in the vastness of space. Lyra's expression remained serious as she expertly piloted her ship through the open space, her hands moving gracefully over the controls. John, now aboard Lyra's ship, couldn't help but marvel at the vessel around him. He had worked on countless ships in his career, but this one was different. The walls were smooth, with no visible seams or bolts. The controls were sleek, almost like they were a part of the ship itself, rather than added components. The air inside was fresh and crisp, as if the ship itself breathed life into it. This ship is incredible, John said, unable to keep the awe out of his voice. Lyra glanced at him, a faint smile playing on her lips. It's one of the finest in our fleet. The Valyrian ships are built to last, and they carry the best technology we have. John nodded, trying to take it all in. He had heard rumors about Valyrian technology, but seeing it up close was a different experience altogether. Every inch of the ship spoke of advanced engineering, from the way it moved through space with effortless grace to the way the systems seemed to anticipate his every need. As they left the asteroid belt behind, Lyra began to explain more about the ship. The Valyrian ships are equipped with a core unlike any other. It's a hybrid of our own technology and something older, something ancient. Ancient, John repeated, his interest piqued. Lyra nodded, her expression turning thoughtful. Yes, our ancestors discovered the remnants of an advanced civilization, long before we ventured into space. They left behind technology far beyond anything we could have imagined. We've spent centuries studying and integrating it into our own systems. John listened intently, his mind racing with the possibilities. The idea of ancient technology, more advanced than even the Valyrians, was both fascinating and unsettling. And this ship, it has some of that ancient tech. More than some, Lyra replied. The core of this ship is based on that technology. It's what makes the Valyrian ships so powerful, so unique. But it's also what makes them so dangerous. Dangerous? Jon asked, his curiosity deepening. Lyra hesitated for a moment before continuing. The ancient technology is incredibly powerful, but it's also unpredictable. We've mastered it to some extent, but there are still things we don't fully understand. That's why the enemy is after us. They want the technology for themselves, and are willing to do anything to get it. Jon felt a chill run down his spine. This was more than just a simple repair job. He was now caught up in something far bigger, something that could have far-reaching consequences. But instead of fear, he felt a surge of determination. He wasn't going to back down. Not now. So, what do we do? Jon asked, his voice steady. For now, we need to stay ahead of them. Lyra replied. The repairs you made have bought us some time, but they'll be tracking us. We need to find a safe place to finish the repairs and figure out our next move. Jon nodded in agreement. I'm with you. But I need to know more about this ship if I'm going to help. There's a lot here that I don't understand. Lyra seemed to consider this for a moment before nodding. All right. I'll show you what I can. She led Jon deeper into the ship, through corridors that were lit by a soft, ambient light. The walls seemed to glow with a faint energy, and there was a hum in the air, almost like the ship was alive. They arrived at a large chamber near the center of the vessel. In the middle of the room was a massive structure, pulsating with a gentle blue light. This is the core, Lyra said, gesturing to the structure. It's the heart of the ship. It powers everything, from the engines to the weapons, to the life support systems. It's also the most heavily guarded part of the ship. Jon approached the core, feeling the energy radiating from it. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The surface was smooth and reflective, with strange symbols etched into it that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. It's incredible, he murmured, reaching out a hand to touch the surface. Be careful, Lyra warned. The core is sensitive. It's connected to the ship in ways we don't fully understand. It reacts to us, to our thoughts, our emotions. Jon pulled his hand back, a new sense of respect and caution washing over him. This is why they're after you, he said, realizing the gravity of the situation. They want this core, don't they? Lyra nodded. Yes, if they get their hands on it, they could do unimaginable harm. That's why I need to keep it safe, no matter the cost. Jon felt a surge of resolve. Then we'll make sure they don't get it, whatever it takes. Lyra looked at him, her eyes searching his face for a moment. Then she smiled, a real, genuine smile. Thank you, Jon. I knew I could count on you. Jon returned the smile, feeling a strong connection forming between them. But before he could say anything more, the ship's alarms suddenly blared, cutting through the moment. Lyra's expression turned serious again as she rushed to a nearby console. They found us. We need to move now. Jon's heart raced as he followed her, ready to do whatever it took to keep the ship and its mysterious core safe from those who would use it for evil. Growing closer. As the alarms blared, Lyra and Jon hurried to the cockpit, their minds focused on the immediate threat. The enemy had found them, and there was no time to waste. Lyra's fingers flew over the controls, activating the ship's defenses and preparing for evasive maneuvers. Jon watched her, impressed by her calm under pressure. We've got 3 ships closing in fast, Lyra said, her voice steady but tense. They're trying to cut off our escape. Jon scanned the displays, trying to make sense of the alien technology. The enemy ships were small and fast, built for pursuit. He could see their weapons powering up, ready to fire. We can't outrun them, can we? He asked. Not in our current state, Lyra replied. The repairs bought us some time, but we're not at full strength yet. We need to find a way to shake them off. Jon thought quickly, trying to come up with a plan. The ship's advanced technology was impressive, but it was also unfamiliar. He knew he had to trust Lyra to handle the flying, But maybe there was something he could do to help. What about the ship's weapons? Can we fight back? Lyra shook her head. The weapons are powerful, but they take time to charge. We'd be vulnerable while they're powering up. We need to buy ourselves some more time. John looked around the cockpit, trying to think of anything that could help. Then an idea struck him. What about the asteroid belt we just passed through? If we can lure them into it, they might have a harder time maneuvering. Lyra glanced at him, considering the idea. It's risky, but it could work. They're faster than us in open space, but the asteroids could level the playing field. Then let's do it, John said, determination in his voice. Lyra nodded and altered their course, heading back toward the asteroid belt. The enemy ships followed, closing in fast. John could feel the tension in the air as they approached the belt, the massive rocks spinning through space like deadly obstacles. Hold on, Lyra warned, her grip on the controls tightening. The ship plunged into the asteroid belt, weaving between the huge rocks with a skill that left John breathless. The enemy ships followed, but their pursuit wasn't as smooth. They struggled to navigate the chaotic environment, their speed becoming a liability. Lyra's ship danced through the asteroids, using the environment to their advantage. John could see the enemy ships faltering, their attempts to close the distance growing more desperate. One of them clipped an asteroid, spinning out of control before exploding in a fiery burst. Nice, John exclaimed, feeling the surge of hope. But they weren't out of danger yet. The two remaining ships were still on their tail, and they were adapting to the terrain. Lyra's brow furrowed as she concentrated, pushing the ship to its limits. Come on, just a little further, she muttered under her breath. Suddenly, the ship shuddered as one of the enemy vessels got off a lucky shot, striking them on the side. The impact sent them spiraling, and alarms blared as damage reports flashed across the screens. We're hit, Lyra shouted, struggling to regain control. John's heart pounded as he gripped the edge of his seat. He could see the enemy ships closing in for the kill, their weapons charging. They needed to act fast, or they wouldn't survive the next barrage. Without thinking, John sprang into action. I'm going to try something, he yelled, rushing to the back of the cockpit. Lyra didn't have time to question him as she focused on keeping the ship steady. John reached for a panel he had noticed earlier, something that looked like a manual override. He had no idea if it would work, but he had to try. He opened the panel and found a series of controls, each labeled in a language he couldn't read. Trusting his instincts, he flipped a switch and felt the ship's systems respond. The lights flickered and the ship shuddered, but then it stabilized. What did you do? Lyra asked, her voice tense but curious. I'm not sure, John admitted, but I think I diverted power from non-essential systems to the engines. We should have a bit more speed now. Lyra's eyes widened with surprise. That might just work. Hold on tight. She pushed the ship forward, and John could feel the difference immediately. The ship surged ahead, its speed increasing as it shot through the asteroid belt. The enemy ships tried to follow, but they were caught off guard by the sudden burst of speed. Lyra guided the ship through a particularly dense cluster of asteroids, using their increased speed to slit through narrow gaps that the enemy couldn't follow. The remaining ships struggled to keep up, their pilots making desperate maneuvers to avoid collision. John watched as one of the enemy ships clipped an asteroid, spinning out of control before crashing into another rock. It exploded in a brilliant flash, leaving only one ship remaining. Just one more to go, Lyra said, her voice filled with determination. The final enemy ship was tenacious, but Lyra was relentless. She led it on a wild chase through the asteroids, using every trick she knew to keep them at bay. Finally, she spotted an opportunity, a large asteroid that was slowly rotating, creating a temporary gap in its surface. Hold on, she shouted, diving toward the gap. The ship slipped through just as the asteroid rotated, closing the gap behind them. The enemy ship tried to follow, but it was too late. The asteroid slammed shut, crushing the enemy vessel with a deafening crash. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Lyra let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with relief. John grinned, feeling a sense of triumph. "That was incredible," he said, looking at Lyra with newfound respect. Lyra smiled back at him, a warm, genuine smile that made his heart skip a beat. "We make a good team," she said softly. John nodded, feeling the connection between them grow stronger. They had just survived a deadly chase, but more importantly, they had done it together. As they left the asteroid belt behind and entered safer space, John couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Danger lurks. After their narrow escape from the asteroid belt, the atmosphere on the ship had shifted. The adrenaline rush of the chase was beginning to wear off, and the reality of their situation was setting in. John and Lyra knew they weren't out of danger yet. The galaxy was vast, but it also held many hidden threats. As they continued their journey, the ship's systems hummed with the sounds of repairs being automatically carried out. Lyra had set a course for a remote star system where they could make further repairs and regroup. The ship had taken a beating, and it needed time to recover. John sat in the cockpit beside Lyra, both of them quiet as they watched the stars streak past. The silence was comfortable, a shared understanding of the gravity of their situation. But beneath the calm surface, there was an undercurrent of tension, a feeling that something was off. "Something's bothering you," Lyra finally said, breaking the silence. She glanced at John, her eyes searching his face. John hesitated, then nodded. "I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched," he admitted. "Ever since we escaped the asteroid belt, it feels like someone, or something, is following us." Lyra frowned, her hands tightening on the controls. "I've been monitoring the sensors, but I haven't picked up any signs of pursuit. Still, I trust your instincts. We should stay on high alert." John appreciated her trust. It was one of the things he admired about Lyra. She didn't dismiss his concerns, even when there was no evidence to support them. She had a keen sense of intuition herself, and she understood the value of listening to that inner voice. As they continued to travel, John couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He kept his eyes on the displays, watching for any sign of trouble. Hours passed, and the tension in the cockpit grew thicker with each passing minute. Then suddenly, the ship's sensors beeped, drawing their attention. Lyra leaned forward, her brow furrowing as she examined the readings. "There's something out there," she said, her voice low. "It's faint, but it's definitely there. Another ship, maybe." John's heart raced as he tried to make sense of the data on the screen. The readings were strange, unlike anything he had seen before. It was as if whatever was out there was trying to hide, to mask its presence. But why? "Can we get a visual?" John asked, his voice tense. Lyra nodded and activated the ship's external cameras, scanning the area around them. At first, the screen showed nothing but empty space, stars twinkling in the distance. But then something moved, just a flicker, barely noticeable, but enough to catch John's eye. "There," he pointed, his finger tracing the movement on the screen. Lyra zoomed in, enhancing the image. What they saw sent a chill down John's spine. It was a ship, but not like any ship he had ever seen. It was sleek and dark, its hull seemingly absorbing the light around it. It moved with an eerie grace, almost like it was gliding through space rather than flying. "That's not one of the ships that attacked us," Lyra murmured, her eyes wide with apprehension. "But it's definitely not friendly. We need to figure out what it wants, and fast." John nodded, his mind racing. The ship was keeping its distance, not attacking, but not leaving either. It was as if it was waiting, watching them, trying to gauge their next move. Whatever its intentions, John knew they couldn't afford to wait around and find out. "We need to lose them," John said, his voice firm. "Can we jump to a different system?" Lyra shook her head. "Not yet. The ship's engines are still recharging from the last jump." We need more time. Time they didn't have. John cursed under his breath, trying to think of a plan. They were sitting ducks out here, and whoever was in that ship knew it. They had to do something, anything, to throw off their pursuer. Then an idea came to him. What if we make it look like we're in distress? He suggested. Shut down the engines, power down the systems, make it seem like we're helpless. If they think we're an easy target, they might get careless, and we can use that to our advantage. Lyra considered the plan, then nodded. It's risky, but it might just work. We'll need to time it perfectly, though. If they realize it's a trap, we'll be in even more trouble. John knew the risks, but he also knew they didn't have many options. Let's do it, he said, determination in his voice. Lyra quickly began shutting down non-essential systems, dimming the lights and reducing power to the engines. The ship's hum grew quieter, and the displays dimmed, creating the illusion of a ship in distress. John watched the mysterious ship on the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. Would they take the bait? He could see the ship slowing, drifting closer as if to inspect them. His fingers hovered over the controls, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. The tension was unbearable as the enemy ship drew closer and closer. John could feel the sweat on his palms, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Then, just as the enemy ship was almost within striking distance, Lyra whispered, "Now." John hit the controls, reactivating the ship's systems in an instant. The engines roared to life, and the ship surged forward, catching the enemy off guard. Lyra executed a sharp turn, and John activated the ship's weapons, firing a barrage at the enemy vessel. The attack caught the mysterious ship by surprise, and it veered off course, struggling to regain control. Lyra didn't give it a chance. She pushed the ship's engines to their limit, putting as much distance between them and the enemy as possible. As they sped away, John watched the enemy ship shrink on the screen, its dark form fading into the distance. They had escaped, but the encounter left him shaken. Whoever, or whatever, was in that ship was still out there, and they wouldn't give up easily. "We're safe for now," Lyra said, her voice filled with relief. But there was a note of uncertainty too, a shared understanding that this was only the beginning of the danger that lurked in the shadows. John nodded, his thoughts already racing ahead. They had survived another close call, but he knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. The galaxy was vast, and danger could come from any direction. They would need to stay vigilant, because the next threat could be closer than they realized. The chase. The ship's engines roared as Lyra pushed them to their limits. The mysterious enemy ship had regained its bearings and was now in hot pursuit. The once peaceful expanse of space had transformed into a deadly race for survival. John's hands were tight on the controls, his eyes fixed on the screens displaying their pursuer. The enemy ship, sleek and menacing, was closing the distance between them with frightening speed. It was clear that whoever was piloting it was determined not to let them escape. "Can we outrun them?" John asked, his voice strained. "Not for long," Lyra replied, her tone tense but focused. "Their ship is faster. We need to come up with another plan, and quickly." John's mind raced as he considered their options. They had managed to shake off their pursuers once before with a clever trick, but they wouldn't fall for the same ruse twice. This time, they needed something different, something that would give them a real chance to escape. "What about the asteroid field up ahead?" Lyra suggested, pointing to the navigation map. "It's dense and dangerous, but it might be our only chance to lose them." John glanced at the map and saw the field of massive rocks and debris that lay in their path. It was a risky maneuver, but they didn't have much choice. "Let's do it," he agreed, bracing himself for what was to come. Lyra adjusted their course, steering the ship toward the asteroid field. The enemy ship followed closely, relentless in its pursuit. As they neared the field, John could see the giant rocks tumbling through space, colliding with each other in a chaotic dance. "This is going to be rough," Lyra warned, her hands steady on the controls. "Hold on tight." The ship plunged into the asteroid field, weaving and dodging between the massive chunks of rock. The asteroids were unpredictable, shifting and colliding with little warning. Lyra's skillful piloting kept them from being crushed, but it was a harrowing experience. John kept his eyes on the sensors, tracking the enemy ship's movements. To his dismay, it was still following them, expertly navigating the asteroid field as if it had done it 1,000 times before. "They're not giving up," John muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. "Whoever they are, they're good." Lyra didn't respond, her focus entirely on piloting the ship. The asteroids were getting thicker, making it harder to find a clear path. The ship jolted as a small piece of debris struck the hull, but they kept moving forward, determined to survive. John's mind raced as he tried to think of a way to shake their pursuer. The asteroid field was dangerous, but it also provided opportunities. If they could use the chaos to their advantage, they might be able to create a distraction or even cause the enemy ship to crash. "Lyra, can you get us close to one of the larger asteroids?" John asked, an idea forming in his mind. "I can try," Lyra replied, steering the ship toward a massive, spinning rock. "What are you thinking?" "If we time it right, we might be able to use the asteroid's gravity to slingshot around it and change direction quickly. If they're too close, they might not be able to react in time." Lyra nodded, understanding the plan. "It's risky, but it could work. Get ready." John prepared himself as Lyra guided the ship toward the asteroid. The massive rock loomed ahead, spinning slowly in the void. The enemy ship was right on their tail, closing in as they approached the asteroid. "Now," John shouted. Lyra executed the maneuver perfectly. The ship veered sharply, using the asteroid's gravity to swing around the rock. The sudden change in direction caught the enemy off guard. The pursuing ship tried to follow, but it was too late. The asteroid's massive bulk blocked its path, forcing it to pull up sharply to avoid a collision. For a moment, John thought they had done it. The enemy ship was thrown off course, and they had gained some distance. But then, to his horror, he saw the ship regain control and continue the chase, now angrier and more determined than ever. "They're still coming," John exclaimed, frustration and fear gnawing at him. Lyra bit her lip, her eyes scanning the chaotic field around them. "We need another plan. We can't keep this up forever." John knew she was right. The ship's engines were straining, and the constant maneuvering was taking its toll. They needed an exit, a way out of this deadly game of cat and mouse. Then he spotted something on the sensors, a narrow gap in the asteroid field, just wide enough for their ship to slip through. It was a risky move, but it might just be their ticket to freedom. "Lyra, there's a gap in the field up ahead," John said, pointing to the display. "If we can make it through, we might be able to lose them in the debris on the other side." Lyra nodded, her hands steady on the controls. "Hang on," she said, her voice determined. "This is going to be close." The ship raced toward the gap, the asteroids on either side closing in as they approached. The enemy ship was still on their tail, but it was struggling to keep up with their sudden maneuvers. As they neared the gap, John held his breath, praying that they would make it through unscathed. With a final burst of speed, the ship shot through the gap, narrowly avoiding the asteroids on either side. For a moment, everything seemed to slow down. Then they were through, emerging on the other side of the field. John quickly checked the sensors, and to his relief, the enemy ship was nowhere to be seen. They had done it. They had escaped, at least for now. "We did it," John said, his voice filled with relief. Lyra exhaled slowly, her grip on the controls relaxing. "For now," she agreed, but there was a note of caution in her voice. They had survived the chase, but the danger wasn't over yet. The galaxy was still full of threats, and they would need to stay vigilant if they wanted to make it out alive. A close call. John and Lyra's ship drifted through the quiet of space, the adrenaline from their escape still pumping through their veins. The asteroid field was now behind them, but the threat of their pursuers loomed heavy in their minds. The ship's engines hummed softly as they cruised through the vast emptiness, their senses on high alert for any sign of danger. "We might have shaken them off for now," Lyra said, her voice calm but tinged with uncertainty. "But I don't think they'll give up that easily. Whoever they are, they're determined." John nodded, his eyes scanning the navigation screen. "Agreed. We can't afford to let our guard down. We need to find a safe place to lay low until we figure out our next move." Lyra checked the ship's systems, making sure everything was functioning properly. The intense chase had put a strain on the engines, and she could see the wear and tear on the ship's hull. "We need repairs," she said, frowning at the damage report. "The ship won't survive another encounter like that." John rubbed his chin, deep in thought. "There's a small planet not far from here," he said, pointing to a nearby system on the star map. "It's uninhabited, but it has a breathable atmosphere and should provide enough cover for us to make the necessary repairs." Lyra glanced at the map and nodded. "That's our best bet. Let's head there and make the repairs as quickly as possible. The sooner we're back at full strength, the better." The ship altered course, heading toward the planet John had identified. The journey was tense, with both of them on edge, half expecting the enemy ship to appear on the sensors at any moment. But the minutes ticked by, and there was no sign of pursuit. As they neared the planet, its blue and green surface came into view, a welcome sight after the cold, dark void of space. The ship descended through the atmosphere, its hull glowing softly as it passed through the clouds. They landed in a secluded clearing surrounded by thick forests, the ship's engines powering down with a sigh of relief. John and Lyra stepped out of the ship, taking a moment to appreciate the fresh air and the calm surroundings. The planet was peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. "This place will do nicely," John said, taking in the serene landscape. "We should be safe here for a while." Lyra nodded, already assessing the ship's exterior. "Let's get to work," she said, her voice full of determination. "We don't know how much time we have before they find us again." They worked together, making the necessary repairs to the ship. John handled the mechanical aspects, while Lyra focused on the more technical systems. The process was grueling, especially after the stress of the chase, but they knew it was essential to their survival. As the hours passed, the ship began to look more like its former self. The dents were hammered out, the engines recalibrated, and the hull reinforced. The work was tiring, but it also provided a sense of accomplishment, a small victory in the face of overwhelming odds. Just as they were finishing up, a warning light flashed on the ship's control panel. John's heart skipped a beat as he rushed to check the sensors. His worst fears were confirmed. The enemy ship had found them. "They're here," John said, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to take off. Now." Lyra's eyes widened, but she didn't waste any time. She ran to the cockpit, firing up the engines as John scrambled aboard. The ship roared to life, lifting off the ground just as the enemy vessel entered the atmosphere. The chase was on again, but this time they were better prepared. The repairs had restored the ship's speed and maneuverability, giving them a fighting chance. John and Lyra worked in unison, dodging through the trees and clouds as the enemy ship bore down on them. "This is going to be close," Lyra muttered, her hand steady on the controls. The enemy ship was relentless, firing bursts of energy that lit up the sky around them. John's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the bolts narrowly miss their ship. They couldn't afford to take a direct hit. One solid strike, and it would be over. But Lyra's piloting skills were unmatched. She twisted and turned the ship with expert precision, staying just out of the enemy's reach. As they neared the edge of the planet's atmosphere, Lyra suddenly veered to the right, skimming along the surface of a large lake. "What are you doing?" John asked, confused by the sudden change in direction. "Trust me," Lyra said, her eyes focused on the controls. The enemy ship followed, but it couldn't match Lyra's daring maneuver. As they sped across the water's surface, Lyra executed a sharp turn, diving toward the water at a steep angle. For a moment, it looked like they were going to crash. But at the last second, she pulled up, the ship skimming the water before soaring back into the sky. The enemy ship wasn't so lucky. It tried to follow the same path, but its larger size made the turn too tight. It hit the water at full speed, sending up a massive spray as it crashed into the lake. John watched in disbelief as the enemy ship disappeared beneath the surface, its pursuit finally at an end. "You did it," he said, amazement in his voice. Lyra allowed herself a small smile, but her eyes remained vigilant. "We're not out of the woods yet," she said, "but at least we've bought ourselves some time." As they ascended back into space, the planet's surface fading below them, John couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. They had survived another close call, and with each passing moment, their bond grew stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The unexpected reward. John and Lyra's ship drifted through the stars, the distant glow of planets and galaxies providing a stunning backdrop to their ongoing journey. After their harrowing escape and the intense chase they had just survived, they were finally able to take a moment to relax. The danger had passed for now, but their recent ordeal had left them both physically and emotionally drained. As Lyra finished up the last of the ship's repairs, John prepared a small meal in the galley. The space was filled with the aroma of cooked food, a welcome change from the cold, sterile environment they had been in for so long. He set the table with the last of their supplies and joined Lyra, who had taken a seat and was looking at him with a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude. "Thanks for helping with the repairs," Lyra said, her voice tired but warm. "I couldn't have done it without you." John smiled, setting down a bowl of stew. "We make a good team," he replied. "Besides, it was a lot more fun with you around. I think we work better together." Lyra chuckled softly, her eyes reflecting a sense of relief. "Maybe we do. Let's hope the rest of our journey is a bit less eventful." They ate in comfortable silence, enjoying the simple pleasure of a hot meal. As they finished, Lyra's communicator beeped, indicating an incoming transmission. She glanced at the screen, and her eyes widened in surprise. "It's a message from the Galactic Trade Federation," Lyra said, puzzled. "I didn't think they would contact us." John looked over, his curiosity piqued. "What's it say?" Lyra read the message aloud. "Congratulations on your bravery and skill. We have been monitoring your situation and are impressed by your actions. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to offer you a reward. Please prepare for a visit from one of our representatives." John's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "A reward? For what?" Lyra shook her head in disbelief. "I have no idea, but it sounds like they're serious." Before they could react, a small transport ship from the Galactic Trade Federation appeared on their sensors. It docked with their ship, and a representative stepped aboard. The representative was a tall, elegant figure with shimmering blue skin and eyes that seemed to sparkle with an inner light. "Greetings," the representative said, their voice smooth and melodic. "I am Ilara, envoy of the Galactic Trade Federation. It is a pleasure to meet you both." John and Lyra exchanged glances, still trying to process the situation. "Nice to meet you, Ilara," John said, extending a hand. "We weren't expecting a visit." Ilara smiled warmly. "We have been watching your recent activities. Your actions in helping the distressed ship and your escape from the enemy pursuit were impressive. We recognize bravery and skill when we see it." Lyra looked curious. "And this is why you're here?" "Indeed," Ilara replied. "The Galactic Trade Federation values those who uphold its principles of cooperation and courage. We have decided to offer you a reward for your efforts. This is not only a gesture of appreciation, but also a way to ensure that such bravery continues to be encouraged." With that, Ilara handed them a small ornic box. It was crafted from a metal that seemed to shimmer with its own light, and it was adorned with intricate patterns. "Open it," Ilara encouraged. John and Lyra carefully opened the box, revealing a pair of stunning high-tech devices. One was a sleek communicator with advanced features, and the other was a portable repair kit that looked like it could fix almost anything. Both devices were far more advanced than anything they had encountered before. "These are state-of-the-art," John said, awestruck. "Where did you get them?" Ilara's smile widened. "They are gifts from the Galactic Trade Federation. The communicator will allow you to stay in contact with us and request assistance whenever needed. The repair kit is designed to handle even the most complex repairs, making your travels safer and more efficient." Lyra's eyes sparkled with excitement. "These will be incredibly useful. Thank you." "It is our pleasure," Ilara said with a graceful nod. "And there is one more thing. We would like to extend an invitation for you to visit the Galactic Trade Federation's main station. We believe that your experiences and skills could be of great value to our ongoing missions and research." John and Lyra looked at each other, the offer clearly intriguing them. "That sounds like an opportunity we shouldn't pass up," John said thoughtfully. Ilara nodded. "I am glad to hear that. We will provide you with the coordinates and necessary arrangements. For now, enjoy your reward and prepare for the next phase of your journey." With that, Ilara bid them farewell and departed, leaving John and Lyra alone once more. They looked at the new devices, their minds buzzing with possibilities. "This is incredible," Lyra said, her voice filled with excitement. "Not only did we get out of that dangerous situation, but now we have tools that will make our future adventures so much easier." John nodded, his eyes reflecting a sense of accomplishment. "And we have an invitation to the main station. Who knows what other adventures await us there?" As they settled in for the night, the stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter. Their journey had taken unexpected turns, but with their new rewards and the promise of more adventures to come, they felt more ready than ever to face whatever lay ahead.